All right, look, I know I said I was in the Tyler Benden trenches, and I am. I'm making a video on his player of the season candidacy. But I guess I'm not done talking about Sam Smith. So here we go. So you may remember if you've seen the full video, that I was kind of surprised by how much I like Sam Smith. I knew that he'd been playing well. I knew that James Oliver Pierce had mentioned that not having him for the first section of the season had been a huge issue for them. But I don't think I realized just quite how much I was going to like Sam Smith by the end of doing the research on him. Obviously, that video dives more into the video analysis and what we can see on the pitch. And I wanted to look a little bit in the stats. Now, this is going to be Sam Smith and how he plays in a 4-2-3-1 versus a 4-1-4-1. So I wanted to see how that affects Smith. I think that there's going to be a few things that are quite interesting in here. So let's break into them. So, first thing we want to look at is finishing. We're going to do this through charts for the most part here. I'm going to try and keep this nice and simple. But basically, Smith is scoring a little bit more when he's in a 4-2-3-1. He's almost at a goal every other game in a 4-2-3-1. It's a little bit less in a 4-1-4-1. I do want to note that, especially recently, some of those players or some of those teams, sorry, that we've played in the 4-1-4-1 are the more strong teams in the division. So Reading are playing that formation when they feel the need to be a little bit more stout. So it is at least worth noting that perhaps Smith is scoring a little bit less because, he's not getting as many chances in those games when he's in 4-1-4-1. And we'll see that a little bit later as well. But if we look here, his XG, he's beating it whether he's in either formation, but he is generating more XG as well in 4-2-3-1. And that figure is closer to the actual goals number. So not only is he, generating more threat, he is actually able to finish at a higher rate too in the 4-2-3-1. Perhaps that's due to space and the space around him. Perhaps that's due to the position that he's able to get himself into in that formation, but he is at least a little bit better in that formation. A little bit better for expected assists in 4-1-4-1. I think he's closer to other players in this formation. And something that I saw when looking at the raw data is that he'd have to come back towards his own net or towards the halfway line a lot more when Reading were playing that particular formation. Let's look at his shooting. So the key thing to know here is that Smith scores a goal about once in every 4 shots. That's pretty good, by the way. Just to give you an idea, Harry Kane is the best in Europe for this, obviously. He's below 3. Mbappe, though, and Haaland sit around, I believe, 3.25 and 3.5 shots before they score a goal. So just over 4 shots for Smith per goal. It's really not that bad. But he does get more shots and more shots on target in the 4-2-3-1 versus the 4-1-4-1. So really, I mean, if we want to pump up Smith's scoring numbers, if we want to get him more shots, he's going to do that in the 4-2-3-1. That's something that's shown consistently over the season so far. Let's look at passing and receiving. I think that part of this goes along with this. Obviously, how many shots Smith gets off in a game is going to be related to the passes attempted. So if you look at Shrewsbury, is a really good example of a recent game where he received a lot of passes and he also got a decent amount of shots. Here we can kind of see the passes attempted each game and the accurate passes in either formation versus the received passes. And while the passes attempted are kind of the same on either side, I think that the fact that the accurate passes and the received passes number are higher just means that there's more space for Smith to operate in. During the video, I talked about how I like Smith when he's running in between defensive lines, so in between perhaps 2 center backs, and able to run beyond the line. I think that he's able to pick up more of those kinds of balls in the 4-2-3-1. So my preference, looking at this data, would probably be to use Smith in a 4-2-3-1 more often. Let's look a little bit at duels and pressing. Obviously, this is very important to how Reading play, and it is something that Ruben is going to want out of any striker that's playing in this system. We can see that in the 4-1-4-1 system, Sam Smith is able to win more defensive duels, and he has a higher duel winning percentage in this particular system. It's relatively the same for overall duels, but interestingly, in 4-1-4-1, noticed a big discrepancy. He wins a lot more of his aerial duels. So I'm unsure if that's perhaps because he's challenging maybe a center mid rather than a center back who might be bigger in that 4-1-4-1 situation, whereby he is coming back towards his own net a bit more frequently. But it is at least interesting and worth noting there that he does win more aerial duels when in 4-1-4-1. And then finally, just wanted to talk about those recoveries. So yes, great that he's winning more of those duels that are, towards his own goal. But really, we want Smith recovering the ball in the opposition half. So he does get a few more recoveries per 90 in the 4-1-4-1, but a higher percentage of those recoveries are in the opposition half, where we want them to be, where we can then cause chaos, where we can then attack a defense that isn't actually set up to defend, a defense that's set up to build up. And that's really what Selles' system is all about exploiting. So I would argue that for the kind of style that we're looking to play here, Smith is best in a 4-2-3-1. He can get involved more, and he certainly can be useful in a 4-1-4-1. But if we want to make the most of him in terms of getting more goals, I think that it's the 4-2-3-1 moving forward.